Okay, this week we're going to talk about jQuery. It's a JavaScript library that lets you manipulate HTML objects easily and cross-browser compliant. Mostly. You should always test in the final product, but it's generally cross-browser compatible. So this is their site, jquery.com. To install, you can either download the file or you can reference it with this link below. You just put it in the header. When you're building the PhoneGap app, it's best to download the file. You can't always depend on an internet connection with an app. But for our demonstration, we'll use the URL. So installation is that easy. Before we get into jQuery, I'm going to backtrack to CSS. I just created a div named with an ID slider. You can put anything in it, text, images, and so on. Going to talk about CSS positioning. There are several parameters. One is absolute. With this, you can place an object with a coordinate on the browser. It is absolute to the parent, meaning if it's inside another div, then it's absolute to that div, and so on. So this is 10 pixels to the left and to the top. And so on. If you have multiple divs and you want one to be on top of the other, you can use the Z index and a number. The bigger the number, the higher it is on the layer. Okay, let's jump straight to jQuery. And notice that I'm going to add the script after the reference. If you add the script before the reference, it will blow up because it doesn't understand. Because you need to define jQuery before you can actually use the script. A key event to jQuery is that you need to load the HTML first before you can execute the jQuery, and there's an event for that. It's called document ready. And inside the parameter is a function, an anonymous function, and whatever you want to execute goes in here. Okay. So basically you need to load all the HTML objects before you can manipulate them. If you try to manipulate it before loading, it just wouldn't work. Remember in our previous JavaScript courses, we used getElementById to grab the object to manipulate it. With jQuery, there's something similar. It's called a selection or a selector with the $, quote, something that goes inside, let's say our div slider. Notice the $, it's an ID, and you can manipulate it however you want. Let's say you want to change the CSS to it. Let's change the font weight inside it. to bold. The font is now all bolded. Okay, it's as easy as that. You can also do the equivalent of jQuery like so. In cases where you're using multiple jQuery libraries, it's recommended to do this rather than this. Sometimes code override each other and cause conflicts. So this helps to not cause conflicts. Okay. So as you can see, the selector, you can select by anything like an ID, a class, a name. Let's say you can select all the divs on the page, and let's give them all a border. To 1 pixel, solid, and black. Okay. Let's add another div just for fun. We'll call it output. Leave it blank. We could play around with the z-index. As you can see, the blue box is now on top of the white box. If you want to do multiple styles, you could use the JavaScript object with the curly bracket. With this, you could do multiple styles, like you could do font weight, separated by a comma. Okay, so all the divs have those multiple styles. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to work with. We could do the same with the like how we did with inner HTML. We can do output.html. Hello world. Okay, so it's pretty easy. Let's move on to the fun stuff like animation. To hide an object, you just set it to hide. It's equivalent to display none. So the output box is gone. And to show, just set it to show. Okay, so those are the two fundamentals of hide and show. These next animation functions are good for, let's say, for menus, like drop-down menus or sliding menus. Slide up. As you can see, it's lit up and then it set itself to hide. And slide down only works if it's already hidden, so you won't see the effect unless you set the display to none. Slow it down. We'll get rid of that. We'll do slide up again, but there are several parameters you can put in there. The easiest one is slow or fast, meaning the slow animation or fast animation. According to the API documentation, you can add the duration in milliseconds or the easing type. And finally, a complete function, meaning whenever the function is completed, it will trigger another function. A lot of these jQuery animation has this, which is really helpful. We'll see more later on. I can add 5,000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds. As you can see, the animation is rather slow. You can also fade an element. That's in fade out. Disappears. Let's slow it down so you can see better. Okay. And the handy animate. Okay, so it animated using the left property to 500. Or if you want to do both left and top, move to diagonal. Okay, so the next topic would be events. We've already touched on it with the ready event. So we'll do the mouse event next. Let's make our slider clickable. And it's simply click. Make sure you have the correct opening and closing curly bracket and parentheses. Obviously there are other events like double click, mouse over, mouse down, and so on. Mouse over. Let's have this guy animate on a click. Okay. The position of the animation doesn't have to be a static number. It could increment every 500 pixels. And you use plus equals for that. So every time I click, it changes by 500. Okay. And we'll add a second parameter. Let's say it takes a second to animate. We'll add on that complete function. So this is a function that executes when the animation completes. For now, we'll just make it animate down whenever the left animation is completed. Okay, pretty simple. Alternately, you can use this as a keyword. Since this function is inside this other function, this basically refers to the object selected here. Okay. Let's put our output div to use. Let's say it's a score box. We'll create a variable called score. Set it to 0. And every time we click on the box slider, animates. In addition to animating, it adds one to score. And in doing so, it's also outputs the score variable. As you can see, it's changing. 3, 4. If you need to increment more than 1, you can do the following syntax. Score is equal to score plus 10. So this increments by 10 or 100. A shortcut would be score plus equals 100. As you can see, the syntax is exactly the same as in the animation of plus equal and then a number. To add a little logic to our slider div, so we can do if slider get the position left, only perform the animation if it's less than 800 pixels. So basically what this is saying is you're only clickable when you're under 800 pixels. So now the box is not clickable after a certain coordinate. We can also reset the position as well. So if else, meaning that if it's greater than 800, we can reset the position using the CSS method. Top pixels and the left. Pixels. So this should reset itself back to the top left corner. Like so.